the 5 best FPL drafts for game week 1. Whether you want to start with Haaland, whether you want to start with Salah, whether you want to start with both of them or neither, today I'm going to take you through 5 FPL drafts for the start of the season that you can use as templates for game week 1 that have all the combinations you could possibly want for all those premiums we've just mentioned. What is up everyone, FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 1067 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here. And this is the 5 draft video. I did it last year and it got such good feedback, so we are repeating it again for this FPL season. Today we're going to go through 5 different draft templates that you can use to build as a structure if you want to use whatever combination of different premiums you want. It is all well and useful me telling you what my draft looks like if I want to have a Haaland no Salah draft. But I know there's lots of you watching that will be going Salah, no Haaland, or you'll be going both of them or something like that. So I will take you through 5 different drafts that have a different combination of premiums in. I'll have a look at what the setup would be if I was doing that different combination. At the end, we'll have a look at the Fantasy Football Scout projected points that I'm getting from the app at the moment. We'll have a look which is predicted to do best in game week 1 and which is predicted to do the best throughout the first 6 game weeks as well. So diving in, the first one that we're going to look at is the no Haaland, no Salah draft. And it is a draft that looks so good on paper. And you can completely understand why some people think it is absolutely the best draft to be building. That Salah isn't worth 12.5 and Haaland isn't worth 15. You have players like, you've got Saka, Jota, Eze, Fernandez as your midfield 4. With Christopher Nkunku still sat on the bench because he plays Man City this week, ready to sub in. Havertz, Isak, Solanke as your front 3. You've got a premium defence in Gvardiol, Trent, Pedro Porro, and David Raya in goal. It looks so good. But for me, the big caveat and the big red flag for this is, of course, captaincy. It looks great in game week 1 because you've got Alexander Isak at home to Southampton. But generally, Haaland and Salah are going to be the highest scoring players in FPL you'd expect again this season. And as a result, they are likely to be the most reliable captaincy options for us pretty much every single week. And although you might not want to play with captaincy in mind, it is a massive part of why we play the game. It is a double points for any particular player. So you do need to take it into account. If you think you can get through the first 5-10 game weeks with getting 80-90% of the points that Captain Salah or Captain Haaland would, then absolutely a draft like this looks great. And if captaincy wasn't part of the game, a draft like this would be absolutely popular and it would be one of the most, I'd probably think it would probably be the template if captaincy didn't exist. Unfortunately, it does, so I probably would advise not going for it. But if you don't want Haaland and Salah, this is the team that I'd have for game week 1. Next up is a Haaland only draft, and this is very similar to the draft that I put out in my latest team that I did on Monday. Again, we've gone with Saka over Salah, so you do start to have a little bit more of that Arsenal coverage. You haven't got quite as many premiums in defence. There's no 5.5 goalkeeper. You haven't got Pedro Porro, but Barco and Robinson as cheap options rotate really well. You're starting in Nkunku every week, and then someone like a Smith Rowe at 5.5 offers really good value. The other difference to my draft is a lot of people in the comments like Chris Wood over João Pedro. I quite like João Pedro. He's causing me a bit of a headache. He was a player who I wanted in my first draft. Then he missed a lot of preseason because he was out injured and we didn't expect him to be back in game week 1. Then they started the last preseason friendly and he scored and he's on penalties. So I don't mind him as an option, but I understand why a lot of you are going with Chris Wood. This is really nice. That Saka, Jota, Eze and Nkunku Smith Rowe midfield 5 is becoming very popular. You can swap the premium defenders as and when you want. If you wanted to drop Gvardiol to a Pedro Porro, you wanted to go Gabriel Saliba. Of course, these are just templates and you can tweak them as and where you want for the sort of players in exactly the way you want it. If you prefer other 5.5 million midfielders to Smith Rowe, if you prefer Muniz to Wood, absolutely you can go and do that. But this is the structure I am pretty set on now if I'm going for Haaland and no Salah for game week 1. Next up is a Salah no Haaland draft. So there's no real major changes. What we've done is we've dropped Erling Haaland down to Kai Havertz. You could even go to Dominic Solanke or you could go to Ollie Watkins if you prefer it in and around the same price. We've gone from Christopher Nkunku all the way up to Mo Salah. We've kept Saka, Jota, Eze. We've kept Smith Rowe in there as well. With the spare million that this team affords, we've gone and got Pedro Porro back in the defence. And we've gone Gvardiol, Trent and Porro with a 4.5 goalkeeper. I think you're best off upgrading a defender rather than upgrading to a David Raya. I still don't think I'm going to start with David Raya at 5.5. Just not certain on him for the opening 5 weeks. Again, it's pretty similar to the Haaland draft. You just need to decide whether you prefer Haaland or Salah for captaincy early on. I do think you need to be picking one. I think the rest of your squad struggles when you start to add both of them. And we'll look at those drafts in just a moment. So pick whether you like Haaland or Salah for game week 1 to 5 in terms of captaincy, and then go with the other players in and around it. The rest of the team looks pretty similar. This is the Salah no Haaland draft. Starting to look at a Salah, Haaland, and now Trent draft. This is very, very popular, and most of the people going with Salah and Haaland are building something pretty similar to this. So the defense looks pretty similar, but instead of Saka, of course, you've gone up to have Mo Salah in your team, and then you're rotating a few cheaper options. So we've gone with Hudson-Odoi in here over the likes of Diogo Jota. João Pedro, of course, up front now, and Smith Rowe. Those three rotate really well. You can get a good fixture, well, 2 good fixtures out of the 3 pretty much every week, and you just bench the one without the good fixture. So it does work pretty well. You can build a good squad. You are reliant on Salah and Haaland doing pretty well every single week. I do think there are good options in and around that 7.5 million price point, both in defence, in midfield, and up front as well, that maybe you are stretching a little bit more. If you're not going to captain Salah in game week 1, that's when I think you should move away. So look at Salah versus Isak for captaincy in game week 1, and that might decide whether you think you need Salah, Haaland or not. The team looks really good. I understand why people want it, especially because you then own the most highly owned, well, the most expensive player in defence, midfield, and up front. So if someone else does well, you can get to any player in the game if you want to. So squad structure-wise, it does look pretty good. But when someone like Jota starts to come in good value, someone like Saka or Havertz, that makes me move away from having Salah if I don't want to captain him. And then finally, we're having a look at the Salah, Haaland, and then Saka draft. So Saka has come in. We've had to make extra sacrifices both in defence and in midfield. So not only have we got Hudson-Odoi, João Pedro, and Smith Rowe, we've added another 5.5, which I've gone with Murphy of Newcastle. Again, he's set to start the first 3 games until they potentially sign another right winger before the end of the transfer window. They do rotate really well, but 5.5 million attackers does feel a little bit too like you're cutting budget here and there and everywhere. Into defence, you are doing the same again. So there's no one over 5.5. You've got Porro, Muniz, Aina, Robinson, and Barco. Now, don't get me wrong, they rotate really, really well, but you don't have a Saliba, you don't have a Gvardiol, you don't have a Trent, don't have any of those other premium defenders. And if one of them hits the ground running, it's very, very difficult for this draft to go and stretch to it. This is by far what I think is the weakest. You don't need Saka, Salah, and Haaland. You can only captain one of them every week, let alone having 2 or even 3 of them. So it's an interesting thing. I don't think it's actually as weak as I thought it was when I went to build this draft. It is definitely stronger. And if you don't trust the premium defenders, then it is viable. If you don't think those premium defenders in Trent, Gvardiol, and the Arsenal defence are worth it for game week 1, then it's absolutely worth considering. I do like the premium defenders. I won't be going with this. But if you don't want the premium defenders and you want Saka, Salah, Haaland, and Isak, this is the template I'd go with. So then just having a look, as I said, at the predicted points for them early on. I've taken these all from the Fantasy Football Scout members area and actually the app that I'm using non-stop now. I've looked at the teams, and what I've done is I've moved them with the planner for the first 6 game weeks, seen what they'd look like, see what the rotations I can do, and future planned every single one of these teams, and then taken the projected points that they have on their member site as well, and given the first game week and then the first 6 game weeks as well. What it doesn't take into account, of course, is I haven't made any transfers. So there are certain weeks further down the line which you would make transfers, right, if you got from game week 1 to 6. So that is a big caveat to doing it like this, but it is still interesting to look at. What I found so interesting is game week 1, no Haaland, no Salah is actually expected to be the best team for game week 1 because you have so many players with a good fixture. You don't have City players effectively away at Chelsea. You don't actually have any Chelsea players starting against Manchester City. You have double Arsenal against Wolves. You've got Spurs. You've got double Liverpool in there. It does look really nice. But once you move away from that, the captaincy is really what hinders that squad. And it's actually the lowest ranked out of all of the 5 teams we've got for the first 6 game weeks. So it's great for game week 1. But when captaincy becomes more important and Isak doesn't play Southampton at home all the time, it does fall away. Then the big premium options come next. And they do get pretty close to either the Haaland only or Salah only draft. Both of them are pretty close. They do favour Trent over Saka, as I did. I think the Saka, Haaland, Salah draft is just a little bit too bare bones in defence. Then it does favour Haaland only or Salah only, of course, on top of having Trent in there as the best 2 teams. It is down to that captaincy that if you own both of them, you can't captain them every week. You're best off picking one and spreading the funds around your squad. Now, the predicted points is actually pretty close. It's only sort of 15 points between the best and the worst over the first 6 game weeks. things could very easily change, right? This is predicted points, and football is played on grass, and predicted points are only a good estimate of what might happen in the future. But I'm almost certain things might not add up exactly as we've got in the screen. But I think it's an interesting experiment to see with the 5 squads that I've built what potentially might happen over the first 5 weeks. I do agree that either Haaland only or Salah only is probably the way to go, and that no Haaland, no Salah is the weakest. But again, look at what premiums you want. Look at what premiums you want out of Salah and Haaland in particular. And then in this video, there are 5 drafts that you can pick from that hopefully have a good template that you can adapt, you can build around going into the start of the season, and a few key players in there that you should probably want to own depending on what structure you want. So this is actually my 3rd time of recording this video. I accidentally deleted it without any backup or anything. The second version had an issue with the audio quality. So this is my 3rd time of recording, and it is 10:30 at night. I recorded the first one slightly earlier. So if that's no reason to subscribe and like the video if you haven't already, appreciate any comments you have. For me, this is the most interesting, most dynamic, sort of covers everything in one video 2 days before the start of the season. So I hope it is helpful, which is why I wanted to get it right the many times that I've recorded it. Thank you all so much for watching. Appreciate all the support during preseason as well. Again, if you like the predicted points or anything in this, do check out the Fantasy Football Scout members area. 1,067 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.